Over the years, the NBA has had some notoriously bad contracts, and a few steals in there as well. Like any rational human being, all I wanted to do was analyze those contracts statistically. So with this post, I have a few goals. Determine what line separates the good contracts from the bad ones, and find reasonable expectations for a player based on what they are being paid. Analyze some of the most infamous contracts in history, and determine what contract performed the worst. Analyze some of the biggest contracts in the NBA today to see who has underperformed and who has overperformed. If all you want to see is the results, then just skip all the way down to the conclusions section near the bottom. The methodology is pretty simple. I need an accurate way to measure the size of salary, adjusted for different years, the net contribution of the player. Decided on measuring the size of the contract as a percent of the salary cap that it occupied over its duration. This seemed to be the most obvious choice, as teams are mainly constrained by the salary cap, and thus this reflects the relative resources occupied by the player. The second metric was more complicated. No single number can perfectly sum up a player's on-court contributions, but I had to pick one that did it as well as possible. Ultimately, I chose win shares, for a couple different reasons. Win shares measures both offense and defense, and it accounts for a player's total impact. For example, if a player misses time due to injury, suspension, or coach's choice, the statistic should reflect that their overall impact has lessened. Next, I had to determine what sample I was going to analyze. I started by coming up with a few objective criteria for selecting my sample. Only completed contracts should be measured, since contracts are signed based on the projected value of the player over the full term of the deal. For example, a 30-year-old signed to a 5-year contract will, on average, be expected to decline every year into the contract. Thus, the contract may appear to be a good deal in the first year or two, but that's only because it is expected that they will perform significantly worse in the remainder. No entry-level contracts will be analyzed, as they have set salaries that are often a significant bargain. One of the interesting conclusions we will be able to draw is reasonable expectations for players at a given salary level, but entry-level deals can construe this. No one-year deals will be analyzed. This is for two reasons. Firstly, one-year contracts are built to be low risk. Bad one-year contract isn't really all that bad. Secondly, the sample size is just too volatile. A few missed games due to injury can easily make the deal look bad, and one strong stretch of games can make the contract look like the deal of a lifetime. With these criteria in mind, it was time to find and filter my sample. While adding every contract ever was tempting, the nature of the data meant a lot of manual spreadsheet work was needed. Thus, I had to pick a smaller sample that would be, hopefully, representative of the whole. To do that, I used SpTrack and sorted by salary for the year 2014, since those contracts should be finished by now. I went into each player, in descending order, and added all contracts from their career that met the above criteria. In total, I manually recorded 250 contracts from just under 150 different players. At this point, I decided my sample was large enough. From here, it was a simple matter of regressing the size of the contracts against the performance of the players. Figure 1. Regression of win shares versus percent of salary cap. Use the R-squared for the relationship between salary and performance as 0.324. So signing good contracts is kind of crapshoot for GMs. Table 1. Statistics of dataset. We can also see there is a fairly large range for both datasets. Table 2. Value ranges for datasets. Within the sample, the best value contract was technically from Brandon Bass. Bass signed a 2-year contract from 2007 to 2009 with the Dallas Mavericks for just under $1.6 million, and contributed around 8.4 win shares during that time. Most best value contracts are similar low-salary deals. If we eliminate these low salary contracts below 5% of the salary cap, the best value contract is Stephen Curry's $44 million deal from 2013 to 2017. During the contract term, he contributed about 59.6 win shares and claimed 2 MVP awards. Per percent of salary cap occupied, Curry contributed 0.97 win shares per season. This metric will be referred to as adjusted win shares, or adjusted WS. The worst value contract within the sample was Kobe Bryant's last deal. Bryant signed a 2-year contract from 2014 to 2016 for which he was paid $48.5 million while contributed about -0.2 win shares. Bryant contributed about -0.003 adjusted win shares per season. Now, when we can take this same methodology and quantify some of the worst contracts in NBA history. Table 3. Value estimates for select historical contracts. Using this methodology among a few select max or near max contracts, Gilbert Arenas' 6-year $111 million contract looks like it might be the worst the NBA has ever seen. However, Brandon Roy's deal isn't far off. In order to apply the current methodology, there are a couple important considerations. First, we need to account for the importance of performance expectations based on the age of a player. In order to project this, I needed to determine what a typical career arc looks like when measured in win shares. In order to measure this, I took a small sample, n equals 50, of players that had made an All-NBA team since 1990, but are no longer active. I used All-NBA players because most of the current players we will be analyzing are also All-NBA caliber players. Figure 2. Average win shares by age for 50 All-NBA players. The data shows almost exactly what you would expect. Players steadily get better until peaking at age 27, and they begin to permanently decline from that point onward. The career arc does have some unusual bumps that are likely due to a limited sample, but due to time constraints I decided not to expand my sample any further. Using this index, I can determine expectations for players' performance while factoring in if their play is expected to decline or improve throughout the remainder of the contract. To illustrate this, I will take the example of Russell Westbrook. Westbrook is in the first year of his contract and is 30 years old currently, so his performance should be expected to decline throughout the remainder of his contract. Therefore, if Westbrook were to achieve a median value deal (MVD), he would have to overperform in the early years of his deal to allow for underperformance in the later years. From our dataset earlier, we know an adjusted annual WS of 0.327 constitutes a MVD, using a median in this instance to exclude high-value outliers on low-value deals. Therefore, if Westbrook's expectations to achieve a MVD would be as follows. Table 4. Example of adjusted WS expectations for Russell Westbrook. Utilizing these values, we can compare his actual performance so far against expected performance. For the current year, Westbrook is on track to finish with an adjusted WS of about 0.175, significantly below a MVD. To determine what contracts should be analyzed, we're simply going to use the largest active contracts in descending order. Table 4. All active NBA contracts $100 million or greater meeting criteria. Players with contracts that didn't kick in until 2019 were excluded from the sample, as well as players that were in the first year of their deals since these were just too volatile. LeBron James' deal looks awful so far, since he missed significant time due to injury. Figure 3. Histogram of 250 contracts for adjusted WS. Next, I wanted to create some arbitrary categories that could be used to place the value of a player's contract, just for ease of reading. The categories are as follows, measured against the expectations for a NVD, dumpster fire, minus 0.24 or less low value, minus 0.16, minus 0.24 below average, minus 0.08, minus 0.16 fair value, 0.08 above average, 0.08 to 0.16 high value, 0.16 to 0.24 steal, 0.24 or more. After evaluating these contracts and categorizing them, the results are as follows. Table 5. Value estimates for active NBA contracts of $100 million meeting select criteria. Keep in mind, these represent the value teams have gotten out of the contracts so far. They do not project the value going forward. As well, there are some funny results in there. Stephen Curry is apparently not living up to his contract by this measure. This likely reflects the flaws of win shares, as well as the result of some injuries. So, to sum up the results of this analysis, the worst contract of all time is likely Gilbert Arenas, who signed a 6-year $111 million contract but contributed just 2.4 win shares in total. The worst value contract I was able to find was Kobe Bryant's last deal, who was paid $48.5 million over 2 seasons to contribute minus 0.2 win shares. Best contract I found, excluding low-value deals less than 5% of salary cap, was Stephen Curry's 4-year $44 million contract, during which he contributed 59.6 win shares among active contracts of $100 million, excluding players in their first year. Giannis Antetokounmpo has provided the best value while Gordon Hayward has provided the worst value.